They ask him and they say, well, Anthony, you were down in Florida when this happened. And he goes, I was on vacation. The defense attorney goes, on vacation, sir? You don't even work, do you? He goes, no, I can't work. And he goes, well, how long are you going to be on vacation for, sir? And he looks at the jury. He goes, until they give me money.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I would have melted down. Welcome to another great episode of Cases Gone Wild with me, your host, Jon Marko, brought to you by Marko Law. We take you on the wildest, craziest case journeys of real legal stories, courtroom battles that are so unbelievable, unimaginable, but they are true. Today, we have a very special guest, Michael Jones of Marko Law, a great guy, great friend, great lawyer, and warrior for the people. We're happy to have Michael on the show today. Thanks for coming, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
If you love us, if you like the show, please share it with your friends. Give us thumbs up. You can watch us live. We're videotaping this whole thing. I'm dressed up in a tuxedo today. We have an event, so I dressed up real nice for everybody. Michael's not looking too shabby either. So please go ahead, watch us, and share with your friends on all your favorite streaming platforms. Michael Jones, welcome to the show, man.
All right. Thank you. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. You have a very interesting story. You grew up in a rural town in Toledo, Ohio.
Yep, just outside of Put-in-Bay.
Small town.
Yeah, Port Clinton, Ohio. Put-in-Bay is always the famous thing. Got Cedar Point over that way, so kind of right on the lake.
Rural Ohio.
Small town, Ohio.
Small town, Ohio. You went to Bowling Green University where you graduated with your degree in education, and then you moved out to Berkeley, California, where I understand you lived in a kind of a bad neighborhood, right? Weren't you like the only white dude on the block?
Well, I decided to move at one point into East Oakland, which is the home of Too Short. Always a warrior on integration and not being separated by race, And so it was a very eye-opening experience. When I moved in, the neighbor across the street said, "Hey, don't worry, honey. They investigate white murders."
Oh my God.
Yeah. And, but it was a predominantly black neighborhood, and it taught me a lot about understanding what it's like when you look around and you realize you're the only person that's white in an all black neighborhood, because I grew up in an all white area in Ohio. So it very enlightening, helped me really in my quest on my journey, not knowing it, but we do a lot of civil rights, a lot of civil justice. And I understand. And what that lady said actually had profound effect. It's, unfortunately, there's probably a lot of deaths that happen in that neighborhood that just go unresolved because no one ever looks into it. So
was that a conscious decision to move into that particular neighborhood, or was it just like where you found a house? Like, how did that?
No, it was, I wanted to go and try to break down racial barriers. And so when I was in California, I was an educator. I was teaching. I'd go school to school. And I would notice that as much as we say that we are this sort of unified population, we tend to still migrate and be in segregated areas. I would go to schools where it'd be predominantly almost all Indian kids or all African-American kids or all white kids. And seeing that, I said, you know what? If I don't try to break down the barrier, so I moved in, it was a conscious effort to go into a predominantly African-American neighborhood.
So was it like a rough neighborhood like we see on what was that? NWA with Ice Cube and stuff? I
was driving home one day, and all of a sudden, the car in front of me, the window rolls out, and a hand comes out, and I hear pop, pop. And I didn't even realize what was going on at the time, but it was a drive-by shooting in front of a liquor store that happened right in front of me.
You saw the gun come out?
Saw a hand. I didn't even realize. I wasn't even putting together everything that was happening. So I just saw basically a hand, and then I heard the noise, and then the car speeds off, and I see people dodging and diving to the ground at the liquor store, and then I put it together, and I said,
it was a drive-by shooting.
That's just what happened in front of me. And it was 2 blocks from my house.
Were you scared?
A little bit. People ask me, they say, did you call the cops? I said, I'm not getting involved in that. No, I don't know. So, This is the one thing though, is I've always felt, and I've always been the type of person, I always just kind of kept to myself. And, I'm not I don't have a very large ego. And for the most part, people just left me alone. So I never felt afraid being there,
Do you feel like it made you a better lawyer to be a civil rights lawyer today?
Without question. I think because when you have an understanding of that lifestyle, first of all, there's a conviction there to really fight against the systemic injustice and the racial inequality that I've seen even through education. And so when the clients come in and I'm hearing their story, I have a lot of empathy and I can understand the pain that they're going through. And then when I'm deposing these people who you can tell are racist, it sort of, it fights that, it gives me that extra fuel to fight for.
Yeah. I have a story that parallels a little bit that I don't know if I've told it on the show before, but I've certainly told jurors this story, especially in civil rights cases. It's a little bit different, but it has a lot of similarities. I grew up in Grand Rapids. I went to Catholic school. It's called St. Thomas the Apostle off of Fulton Street. And it was like all white kids, right? Not necessarily rich, but then I went to Catholic Central, and then it was all majority white kids, more affluent kids. My family didn't have a lot of money, but through my dad's work, they were able to get us in. But anyways, look, I was a mess up kid and I was always screwing around and I got kicked out of school. And my dad said, well, you blew it. You're now going to inner city school, which was at that time, I think it was about 70% African-American, 20% Hispanic, and then 10% white. So it was like a flip, but looking back, that was like the best thing that ever happened to me because I got to see discrimination, how people were treated differently due to the color of their skin, how the kids from this school were getting pulled over for the police for the same things that, the white kids from the other school would be able to drive off. So it had a profound effect. And I guess it opened my eyes to disparity. But I never really felt scared. The first day I felt scared, but then after that, it was like nobody really bothered me. In fact, I think I got bothered less at the inner city school in a weird way than I did at the private school. But I don't know, weird. But it makes us who we are,
It does. And there's always, whenever we're doing those civil rights cases, there's always that argument that people think that, somehow we're advanced, we're past the 1965 civil rights movement, and now race is behind us. And that just, unfortunately, really is not the case, especially when it comes to policing in neighborhoods. Yeah,
for sure. So you taught out there. What did you teach? What grades did you teach?
So I taught 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
Inner city school?
All over. So basically I was a one-man performance, and I would have a time machine, costumes, props. And the school would book our company, and they would give me a calendar, and I would show up at the school, set up. And basically what it would be is, so 4th grade, they do California history, and I would have like a Chumash Indian costume and tell the kids, look, you got to cover your eyeballs or they're going to pop out of your head. And when this time machine would count down to 1, they'd open their eyes and I'd pick a child to come up and they'd be, rowing a canoe. Oh, wow, there's a Chumash Indian. And then talk to them how the native Indians were in California, and then how, Spain came in and they started building the missions. We had Father Sarah. And so you're teaching through, performance, which has helped me a lot in the courtroom.
How did you get into that job?
So I drove out to California with no place to live and no job. And I got...
That's like the California dream story,
I was in Elko, Nevada when I finally got a call from a apartment complex. And they said, hey, Mr. Jones, we've accepted your application. You can live here. I was like, oh, thank God, because I was in a Pontiac Vibe and I was just going to sleep in that car.
Not a big car.
No, it's like a station wagon, But yeah, all of my belongings in that car. I just had that notion that I just wanted to go west, wanted to be in California, wanted to be in San Francisco. So I'm out there, and I think I'd have been out there for a couple of days, and they have these like job works places, and this place had posted a job about that position, but it was all the way down in Santa Ana, which is like near Irvine, Orange County. And I'm up in Berkeley. So I had to.
How far is that for us?
It's like a 6-7 hour drive.
Wow.
Because you got to get through LA,
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of money, so I can't go stay in a hotel. So I had to wake up, drive all the way down there for my interview / audition, show up, interview, audition, connected very well. At that point, I didn't quite have all the theater that they wanted, but they knew that I was committed and that I was a hard worker, and they took a chance on me, but gave me the job, and then I had to drive 7 hours all the way back up to my house because,
Yeah.
And they gave me the job, and so I went down there a couple months later. We went through like a month of training and learning performance, and then they gave me a book, a calendar, and they set me on my way and basically trusted me and said, and I would just show up to schools all throughout the state. So
Wow.
that's where I started to see, though, where I would go into the predominantly black schools where the school lunches would be fruit, bruised up apples and sandwiches in these bags. Meanwhile, I'd go to the white schools, and there was a juice company called Jamba Juice, and they'd come in and like cater these lunches.
It's like gourmet stuff.
And you're seeing the real difference in the education.
And how that affects, kids and their futures and the world, right?
That's right.
So, all right. So you went to, that's interesting background. So then you left and you went to law school out in California?
That's right. So then I kind of had hit a little bit of a ceiling with that job. Fun. But I wasn't able, I would have people come to me with their problems, but I really just wasn't able to do anything to fix it. I felt powerless. And so I ended up going to Sacramento and going to the University of Pacific McGeorge School of Law.
And then you worked for this guy who I think when we first met and you joined the firm, you told me he was like the Jeffrey Feiger of like California for like employment law, right? Lawrence Bohm or something?
Yeah, Lawrence Bohm has the largest verdicts in California. I mean, he's got a couple $100 million verdicts against hospitals and different entities in California.
And so what was it like working for him as a young lawyer?
Yeah, so it's interesting because that was the first introduction into employment law. And I really had no idea. When I went to law school, I didn't even really know about employment law. I always thought more like police, civil rights type work. And what was great about Lawrence was much like you, where he was just day one. As soon as I passed the bar, the next day I was taking the deposition of a high ranking state official, because he also would go after the state. And this is an attorney within the state. And I'm sure if I look back at that deposition transcript, she probably wiped the floor with me.
Yeah.
But from day one, I've been very fortunate in my career. I have worked with people that have said, you know what, just you get in and do it. And I've learned by doing, as opposed to just sitting around and watching.
Yeah, that's how I learned too. It was like trial by fire, sink or swim, they say.
Yeah.
Well, you have a very special skill set. So first of all, you're very empathetic and a caring person. Okay. I mean, I work with a lot of attorneys. You're probably the most caring attorney that I've ever worked with, which I think is important. And especially if you want to be a trial lawyer, and especially if you want to do what we do. Look, you want to work for a corporation, you don't have to be that caring of a person. I don't think it's just not a necessity. But you just have this uncanny ability to take the worst, factual, shittiest cases from a fact standpoint and somehow win. And it's insane. So I want to talk about some of these cases. The first case, Anthony Stubblefield. Okay, we had this case. It was in Washtenaw County Circuit Court, right?
Yep, with Judge Connors, who we're going to be honoring tonight.
Yep, Judge Connors. And I don't know how you won this case, right? Because the simple facts of the case were, you tell the facts of this case, because it is some dude's walking down high and drunk in the middle of the street and gets hit by a car. So how did you win this case? What happened?
I will say that. And I'll say before we get started on this is even in law school, I had done the mock trial team and all that. And people have always told me that my closing arguments are usually the strongest part of my case. And I think it goes against a lot of what people teach in these trial schools is they say, if you don't win an opening, you're done. I feel like there's a lot of times in this Stubblefield case, as we talk about it, I was losing throughout the entire trial until we got the closing argument. But Stubblefield was he was a young man. He's in his 20s, and he was living with his grandmother, and he was decided that he wanted to go down to the liquor store to get some more liquor. So he's going to go get Hennessy, and he decides to cross the street, not in a crosswalk, in dark, pitch black. Everybody, talks about how dark the street is. And as he's in the process of crossing the street, an elderly gentleman hits him with his Ford Focus while he's in the middle of the street, and his head goes into the windshield. And the pictures were great for us. But then he's treated.
It showed like pieces of his hair like sandwiched in between the windshield with blood around it.
It was, yeah, and the windshield was spidered, obviously. But as far as injuries go, amazingly, because I think he was in such good shape because he was a fit young man. It was just some abrasions. And, it was, when he went to the ER, it's not like he had some major gash or anything.
This car, he's a pedestrian. The car hits him. He flies up onto the car and his head goes into the windshield.
And then he rolls off.
Hard enough to break it, right?
That's right. Yep.
And then he rolls off.
Yeah.
All right. So this was a tough case.
This was a tough case because the records, then when he goes to the emergency room, they do note marijuana use and alcohol. And the entire case, as we're litigating the case, has just been marijuana and alcohol, and obviously any good trial lawyer, I talked to Anthony beforehand and I just let him know look, we talk about it ahead of time. We get in front of it, Anthony, you had some alcohol that night. Yeah. But you weren't drunk. No, and you had a little marijuana, and the direct examination went okay. But then on cross-examination, for whatever reason, he decided to then, when the defense attorney's asking him, he goes, yeah, well, I smoked 2 blunts. And just using that term, has a certain connotation to it.
Before he walked to the liquor store.
Then he says, well, I wasn't, drunk enough. I wasn't high enough. So I needed something else. So I went down to get some Hennessy.
It just wasn't a good look, right?
No, it wasn't, and then the worst part of it is that, so he has family that lives down in Florida. And, we talked about that. Yeah, I was down in Florida. I was visiting my family, but, and unbeknownst to me, he never told me this at all. While he was in Florida, he had, for some reason, he threw a can at a car that was driving by, and the police got called, and he tried to run away from the police. And there was body-worn camera of that. And somehow the defendant got this information, and I did not know this at all through the entire trial until they are talking to Anthony, and they say to him, Anthony, can you how has this affected your life? Oh, I can't work out. I can't run. And doesn't say anything. The defense attorney just puts on this body camera of him running from this police officer.
Oh my gosh. Oh my, wait, so your client says I can't run. And then they have a picture of him running from the cops in Florida?
Not even just a picture, it's body camera, and it's again, and I think the defense attorney is playing those racial stereotypes when you have an African-American man running from the police and he gets and Judge Connors let him play that all the way to taking him to the ground. It just
that's bad. So what happened?
And so then they ask him and they say, well, Anthony, you were down in Florida when this happened. What are you doing in Florida? Mind you, none of this ever came up. And he goes, I was on vacation. And the defense attorney goes, on vacation, sir? You don't even work, do you? He goes, no, I can't work. And I can't work because of this, getting hit by the car. And he goes, well, how long are you going to be on vacation for, sir? And he looks at the jury. He goes, until they give me money.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I would have melted down. I would have left. So how were you feeling when that happened?
So, yeah, I'm feeling like, okay, well, and I had made a number of errors. My voir dire wasn't very good. My opening, the defense is objecting Judge Connors sustaining the objection.
He was pretty tough on you on that trial.
He did. I think, if I remember correctly, I think he kind of shut down my opening.
Yeah.
And
in front of the jury.
In front of the jury. So looking bad. And I'm just thinking, okay, like we're likely going to lose.
And was this your first trial?
This was my very first trial.
Yeah, first trial, yeah.
But you never give up, right? And so, I took my lumps, and I came to a crossroads where it was feel sorry for myself, or let's get up, let's just be honest with the jury and tell them what happened here, and put it in their hands. And so what we did in the closing, first of all, I owned to the jury, and I apologized to them. I said, look, I know I made a lot of mistakes, and I apologize. This is my very first trial. And Jeff Feiger is the one. There was a lot of questions about whether I would tell the jury whether or not that was my very first trial or not. And Jeff Feiger said, look, you always tell them if that's your first one, because you'll get a little bit of sympathy from them.
Yeah.
And I saw the jurors kind of nod their head, and that started to make sense. They started to understand the mistakes. But there was a human element. I was exposing myself as a human being, saying, look, this isn't some kind of show. This is Mr. Stubblefield's life.
Yeah.
That he's entrusted with me, and I'm doing my best, but I'm making mistakes, and I don't really, I'm trying to learn as I go. I thought that was very powerful for him. The other thing that we did in that case, though, is that we just framed the issue correctly. And we said, look, ladies and gentlemen, what person in their right mind really gets on the stand and says, I'm on vacation until you give me money?
Yeah, right.
And
in a jury trial for money.
And I believe that this is an idea that came from you, is, we talked about the idea of how dare you inflict a traumatic brain injury on a person that really isn't really thinking correctly, come in here, exploit it, and use it against him. Shame on you, and I think that was powerful.
Yeah, very good defense attorney on that case, Ken Williams. Very good, seasoned defense attorney. He's tried a lot of cases. So that was a very difficult trial. And so how did you win? So you did that. I mean, how did you get around the simple fact, like, let's take out the running from the police and saying that he couldn't run. I want money. I'm not going to work until I get money from this jury. All this other disastrous moments. How'd you just get around the fact that this guy was he in dark clothes too?
Yes.
So you got a black guy at night in dark clothes, walking down the middle of a street, smoked 2 blunts, and drank a bunch of liquor. I mean, let's just start there, Michael. How did you get around that? Because that's a type of case that that if it came in the door, normally I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, I don't think we can take this case. This is too, it's a tough case. I mean, it's a tough case.
So, yeah, but one thing I've always done is I try to read a lot, and I do a lot of David Ball as a jury consultant. I've read a lot of his stuff on damages, and he has a book in damages, and he does a model opening. And in the opening, it says a driver is responsible to see what's in front of them and to see what's there to be seen. And if they don't see that, then they're responsible for all the harm. And that's, we had the theme and theory about, look, the guy is right in front of you. You claim your headlights are on. How do you not see him? And there was a nursery school right down the road there. God forbid this wasn't a kid. And so, but we kept coming back to that. Sir, it didn't matter what they said. He had to be right in front of you. I mean, the way that
because didn't he say he never saw him or something?
Well, the good thing we had for him is that there was questions of whether his headlights were on or not, because our guy said that the headlights were not on. And then he said, I was looking down at the double yellow lines because I missed a turn and I was trying to find a place to make a left.
The defendant driver.
The defendant driver.
So he had missed his turn and was discombobulated or whatever.
And he was, and what I kept focused on, he was looking down at the double yellow lines. And so he is not paying attention as he's driving. So, and then showing the picture was very powerful.
Yeah, that was a great result. I was, frankly surprised at the verdict that you got on it. It was a 0 offer case or something.
Yep.
Or somewhere around there. And then you follow that up with another horrible factual case that I told you not to take, but you wanted to take it anyways. In federal court, a federal court case where you went to trial on a prisoner in Macomb County, and the federal jury pool was an all-white jury pool, I think, right?
I think we had one African-American man
on the panel. Okay. And he was a guy who pissed in a cup allegedly and threw it on jailers, right?
Yes. So this was supposed to be my very first trial. And again, just want to be a trial attorney. So sometimes you got to take these cases nobody wants to try to get the experience.
In fact, another lawyer who didn't have the courage or, first of all, he hardly did anything on the case that was worthwhile. And then he abandoned the client, right?
That's right. Yeah. And so we got the case after motions for summary judgment had been filed. All discovery had been completed. We worked to try to get an expert. We didn't even have an expert to talk about the damage that was caused to this person.
Right.
No wage loss. So,
and your police expert was horrible because this other lawyer was just a mess.
So we're going into a case with tough liability and hardly any damages that can be provable.
Yeah.
And this was supposed to be our very first case. What it was that the guy got picked up on a warrant, and he had an embezzlement charge as well, by the way. So he had taken some money in Indiana, and there was an outstanding warrant for him, and he gets picked up in Macomb County, and he's being held in Macomb County. And
in the jail.
In Macomb County jail. And they say the conditions were miserable. It was really hot. There was no air conditioning.
It is a miserable jail. I mean, I've represented prisoners that got hurt there, and I've represented jailers who've, it's just a horrible place. Horrible place.
So unrest happens, and the inmates start throwing out the garbage out the chute because the jailers won't come clean out the garbage, and the toilets are backing up. And so this is where there's a dispute that goes on about there's a cup of urine that gets involved, and we don't know whose urine it is. And when the guards show up,
they didn't do a urine test.
They did not do a urine test. Nope. So when the guards show up, though, and all you can see, so that they don't have video footage inside the cell that shows what actually happened. But when the door opens, you do see the guards kind of jump back, and so common sense will tell you that there was something that splashed them. So nevertheless, they rush into the room, into the cell. They pull our guy out first, and he's laying on the floor. And there's only one guard there with him, and he's hardly doing anything to control him. And this ended up being very powerful for us because they wanted to portray our guy as some out of control psycho that was trying to, hurt these police officers. And I kept coming back to that video and saying, sir, he is not doing anything to resist you or fight you. He is just laying there peacefully doing nothing. So they get all the inmates out of the cell. They clear the scene, and they take our guy down into the booking area. So they're away from this alleged riot. And that's what they wanted to focus on, was all about this riot.
Was it like a riot you see in the movies with like flaming Molotov cocktails and stuff? Or was this just like guys throwing piss into the hall?
Well, that's funny you say that, because again, as evidence comes in a trial, the Judge Gray, I think this was his very first civil case that he'd ever presided over. He allows this conversation with Mr. Hyde and his mother and brother to come in, where Mr. Hyde is talking about he wants, I think it was Atticus. Attica? Is that the one? It was.
Yeah.
And so he is wanting to incite this huge riot.
This is on like a jailhouse recording or something.
Yeah, and that comes in, and the jury gets to hear.
That's not good. So we got did he admit he threw urine on the officer? So we have an allegation he threw urine. We have a jailhouse conversation of him saying, I want to incite a riot.
And you have 4 or 5 officers coming into the courthouse saying, yes, I saw him. He's the one who threw the urine on me. So I'm pretty sure that the jury in their mind was thinking he threw the urine. And for the client, that was a big deal. He did not do that. And my job, look, if he says he didn't do it, I'm his voice in the courtroom. Yeah. I would say it doesn't matter, because even if you do, you don't have a right as an officer, you need to hold yourself to a higher level, and you
So
don't
what
get
did they
to
do
beat
to
somebody
him?
down. So they claim this riot scene, it is just a little bit of an unrest. They get the situation. All of them say situation is under control, right? So now there's no riot. They take him down to the booking area and they go to put him in this thing that's called a restraint chair. So what a restraint chair is they brought one into the courtroom as well. And that was fun doing a demonstrative. They will strap your hands down and your feet down, right? And they use it to help you cool off when you're kind of over the top. So the issue was everybody says they got both feet secured in his left arm, but his right arm was not secured. And they say they could not get his right arm secured. And so the sergeant, who's like the leader, he decides to pull out his taser and he tases him 3 times to try to get him to comply. So that's really where the case is about. You get basically a secured inmate. Once they're secure, and any level of force is considered excessive. And you got the guy using the taser
On the guy in the chair.
Yes.
Didn't they tase his nuts or something?
So this was the other problem. He claimed that they did. He said, and he maintained it. But again, the problem is in the body worn camera when he's talking to the nurse. He points exactly where it is. It's on the inner thigh. And he never one time tells the nurse that they tased him in the testicles.
Well, maybe if you get tased on your inner thigh, it would like run up to your testicles.
That's what we, so that was one thing our use of force expert was able to say. And that
like it would feel like it, right? It's like electricity.
Yeah. It's the shock would run up there and you would have this sensation. That's what
I don't want any electricity anywhere near my testicles.
No, but I think it would have been a lot better had he taken the taser and stuck it right on
them.
testicle.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a tough case. It's like a he said, she said, but it's all the guards against this guy who says he's going to incite a riot and may or may not have thrown urine on the guards, right? This was a case, because I remember this case, I said, I don't think we should do this case, but you had the courage to say, you know what? Somebody needs to help this guy, right?
That's right. Yeah. And one of the important things that got discussed, but never really explored in the discovery was this idea, though, that there were all these cameras in the facility. And something that I've learned is when you have a potential destruction of evidence, that can be very powerful. And
did they destroy cameras?
So
video?
What they said was they didn't actually produce the video from that. They just said, oh, well, it doesn't actually capture the scene. But when you look in the still shot, you can see where that camera should have been. But not only that, their policy mandated that anytime you use a taser or the chair or there's a riot, they have a handheld video camera that they have to have.
Did they do that?
There were 14 officers, and you're telling me not one of you thought to go get, and that's where we kind of what we made the case about, right? And so it was, if you would have had that camera, we could see all this resistance that you're claiming my client is doing. Where is the video footage? So you're just telling the jury, just take my word for it and believe me, because I didn't do my job correctly that day. So there was that. They didn't have any body worn camera for it. And that case really came about, where is your evidence to show that this guy was resisting? Because what was beneficial for us is the video was so far away that when you saw the video, you don't see him resisting. But that's in the jury room afterwards when I talked to the jury and, hey, what did you think? And they go, well, you're a great attorney. They told me that. They said, oh, wow, you're an amazing attorney, but get new clients.
But you still won the case. You still won the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, that case was I thought it was a very almost unwinnable case. And my observations from when I went into the federal courthouse was 2. Number 1, how many defendants were there again? Like 6?
We had 6 defendants.
So the defense team had all 6 of these jailers sitting in the courtroom in a line, in a row, and it looked like some type of knucklehead football goon squad. I mean, it was like these guys were big. They were kind of tough looking. They were brawny. They look like that guy on the, what's the paper towels or the Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean, cleaning up your house. They were just these big, brawny guys, and they were kind of intimidating, especially when all 8 of them were sitting there kind of staring down. A lot of them were not very friendly looking guys. So I thought that was powerful. And then also I thought was powerful on the first day I get there and our client looks like he was in a jail suit. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's I forget what he was wearing, but it did look like something that would have been issued from Macomb County.
Yeah. So I brought him out in the hall and said, dude, you better go to Target tonight and buy a polo shirt and some slacks because you cannot come back. You look like you are in jail right now. Remember?
Yeah. Yeah, that was.
So what do you think the key was to winning that case? Other than you told us about the video, you told us about the other stuff. What do you think the key was?
Again, I think the key to winning that case, I think there were a number of things I think that really helped me. Number one, I think it was one of the best voir dires that I've ever done. And to your point, you know, one of the, and I don't remember if she made it on the jury or not, but she said, you know, we said the excessive force case, you know, are you okay with that? And she goes, well, this guy better had done something very serious if you got 6 of these guys sitting over here. Because if it takes 6 of them to handle him, then he better have done something very serious. I think that was very powerful and to have in that case. The other part was connecting with the jurors. There were actually where people would have said the panel was very tough. I think my rural background, I was able to really connect with some of the jurors there and to share stories, I think, with them that I knew related to them. And I think that I really gained a lot of credibility and a lot of trust with the jury. And but the other thing, again, it's the biggest thing I learned in that is when you get your theme and theory of a case, don't deviate from it and just keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it.
Right. Yeah. Well, good job. So what other crazy cases are you working on or have you worked on that you can tell us about?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, one of the funniest, I'll go back to California some there. One of the funniest cases, I think, and is one of my favorite deposition transcripts. Early in my career, I'm representing an African-American man who worked at Sherwin-Williams, and he makes a race discrimination complaint. And the defense attorney is cross-examining or deposing him. And he says, well, sir, are you racist? And he goes, no. He's like, I can't be racist. I'm black. And he goes, what does that mean? He's like, you can't be racist just because you're black? He's like, yeah, black people can't be racist. He goes, you know, unless sometimes when I tease my wife that she likes beans because she's a Mexican. He goes, or when, you know, I see a person on the road and they can't drive because they're Asian. And he's just saying this.
Oh,
like
my
all
God.
these racial stereotypes.
Oh, my gosh.
And then, so, you know, after the deposition, I'm talking to the guy, you know, and I'm like, I don't know if that deposition went that well, you know.
And what did he say?
You know, I don't think he really understood sort of his, you know, that's one thing we talk about with the juries. Everybody kind of has these little like implicit biases, things that they're not even aware. And I don't think he was even aware that what he was saying could be offensive or just, you know,
yeah, it's so stupid. It's like that Founders case in Michigan where like there's a black dude who gets like fired and files a wrongful termination case. And he's like clearly like a dark black guy. And the defense was, well, I don't know that he's black. I didn't see his birth certificate, you know, or I mean, I can't judge him like that. I mean, it was just so obscene. It was so absurd. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, how do you believe it? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. We had a trial I was working on with Lawrence Bohm, Mandy Kazmini versus Dignity Health over in Yolo County, which is outside Sacramento. And, you know, we had a similar thing where the manager that was there, she was just kind of off. She's just, I don't know if she's just airheaded or whatever. And, you know, Lawrence is cross-examining her and our client was Iranian. And he had asked her a question about, did you know, how did you know that she, you know, she's white or whatever? Because she was trying to say, oh, she's white. You know, there's no race component. She goes, well, I just looked at her and just assumed that she's white, you know, and it was just, it was very powerful in the courtroom because it just came off the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you tried a case with out in California that resulted in a multi-million-dollar verdict. Tell us about that case.
Yeah, so that was the Casmini case that I worked up, and that case was very interesting. That the moral of this story is, if you always get a bad defense attorney, that can increase the value of your case dramatically.
Oh yeah.
So working up the case, and we have these interrogatories out there. It's an employment discrimination. Our client came in. This was around the opioid crisis was just starting, and there was a bunch of pills that were missing out of this pharmacy, and so they wanted her to come in and clean up the mess. And as she starts doing that, holding people accountable, there's this real underlying racial issue that comes about because she's Iranian, and then there's retaliation because she's complaining about some what she thinks to be illegal behavior. So we have these interrogatories that say who participated in the decision. And
like who fired her?
Yeah, who was involved? Because you have to connect the dots. You have to connect the person who's responsible for the termination as somehow being, through HR or through the manager, has the ability to fire her. And the people that are really undermining her and doing all this stuff, they're just the other people that are kind of in the pharmacy. And so where there is this break in the chain. And the only thing we had were these handwritten notes. And there were these initials on there like AH, but nobody would claim who this AH was, and we didn't have any concrete evidence. In the responses to the interrogatories, there was this person like named Amanda Henry or something that was there, but she no longer worked for Dignity. She was gone, just a ghost. Could not bring her in. So we're going through the entire case, and we're really worried because we're using this cat's paw theory, which is, we're trying to connect dots, but we don't have that solid link. And so Lawrence is doing a cross-examination of this witness, and he gets to those notes again, and he says, he's asking this witness about the notes, and out of nowhere, and this is the last witness, the defense attorney just stands up and says, Your Honor, AH is Amanda Henry, which connected the wrongdoer to the termination, and now they had noticed that she was complaining about race discrimination in the workplace.
Why would they do that?
Why would the defense attorney do that?
Yeah.
I have no idea. To this day, I could not figure out, because if she would have why you ever, don't ever volunteer information. Why she ever did that, I don't know. But she,
in front of the jury.
And it came back to that thing that it looked like they were trying to hide it until the very last second. And I don't know if they really were just trying to hide it and they knew the entire time and she was starting to feel pressure, I think that something you've always told me is when these people start lying, those lies will catch up to them.
Yeah, right.
And I still think to this day, there is something in the back of her mind thinking that we knew something that she thought we did.
And we're going to spring the trap or something.
Or if she's going to look like she's lying in front of the judge. And that's what it seemed. She got nervous that she was making some misstatements in front of the judge or something. And so she just volunteered it.
And that was a huge verdict, wasn't it?
That ended up being like $3.1 million. Yep.
Do you think it would have happened without that mess up?
That's a good question. Probably because she was so bad. I mean, we had enough evidence. I mean, you can always start telling the the momentum carries through the trial.
Yeah.
And I think they had maybe one good day. It was probably a 10-day trial.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you had a big shooting case out on the west side. At what was it? Battle Creek. Was it Battle Creek?
That was, yeah. It was at the cricket club out there in Battle Creek. Yeah. So this is a tragic case because again, there's a race element in this case as well. But young man Xavier West was out with his family. It's the night before Thanksgiving. That's
like the biggest bar night of the year, right?
They promote it as the biggest bar night. It's so big that they decide that they're going to go cash only. So
cash only.
So no credit cards, right? All cash. So you got to pay $20 cover charge to get in, and then the bar is completely cash. And Xavier, sadly, had just lost his grandmother, and the family was all in town. And so after the funeral, him and his cousins, they go out to the cricket club. And the cricket club decides that they're going to hire the kitchen staff, the dishwashers, and the cooks to do their security with no training. And the guys who own that, they own the local firearms store, Freedom Firearms.
No way.
So it's a big concealed carry, right? And so the only training they really have is like concealed carry, which is this whole thing in Michigan called stand your ground defense.
So they let like the dishwashers and stuff carry guns?
So the guy who pulled the trigger on my client, I believe that his job at the time was a cook / dishwasher. But for this night, he was working security.
He was temporary security.
Right. With a gun.
A gun.
So there was about 4 or 5 of the people that were allowed to carry guns. They had about 20 bouncers total. Not every bouncer got to carry a gun, but where they were really stuck was the purpose of the guns were to protect the cash. And so we developed that entire theme about profits over people.
Yeah. Yeah. So they had these guns at this crowded club. And what happened?
So obviously, and when we got the body camera footage, people were just completely intoxicated, stumbling around. There was a shooting that had just happened in their club.
That night?
That our client got shot. We'll get there. And these people that's how drunk the people were. So highly intoxicated. Our client is upstairs with his family. And there was some allegations that the African-American customers were not being served like the white customers were. And so a lady allegedly had grabbed a bottle of liquor from behind the bar and she threw it. And then, then fights start breaking
like
out.
All hell broke loose.
Yes. So our client's uncle pushes somebody and they kind of get in a little bit of a fight. And so the owner is there. He's also working security and he cuts the music. They turn the lights on. They say, that's it. You guys are out of here. And so they're escorting him. So they have 2 bouncers that are escorting this family of 6 or 7 people down the stairs. And the bouncer, very helpful for us, said, we had the situation under control and we were taking him out the door. Well,
was our client being taken out the door?
It was guilt by association because, and technically his uncle was the one getting removed, but they were all going with him.
To it's like your buddies, you're at a bar, your buddies get kicked out. Like you're not going to stay there.
Yeah. They all came together. They're all leaving together.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So, but what was important, at least at this point, was that our client, he didn't do anything wrong, right? I mean, he just happened to be there and his uncle got in a fight. So they're escorting him downstairs. And when they get to the bottom of the steps, the dishwasher playing security guard is at the front door guarding the cash and he sees them coming down. And for whatever reason, and people did tell me a lot that the bouncers were playing tough guy that night, he decides that he's going to go and interject himself into this situation.
Well, weren't the people already leaving?
They were, and the bouncers were great because the bouncers, and the one guy was the head bouncer, said all he had to do was step out of the way and let him walk out the door. If he would not have interjected, none of the fight would have
So
happened.
they weren't like refusing to leave or anything.
No.
They were just walking out the door.
Just walking out the door.
So this guy wanted to be like a cowboy and like get the last word or something?
Be the tough guy, get in the face, whatever he does. So he goes and he confronts the uncle and he gets in his face and the uncle pushes him. And this is really where the case got difficult for us from our perspective. What the defense held on to is then another fight breaks out and none of the other security guards really are jumping in to help at all. And so it almost turns into kind of like a 5-on-1 on this security guard. And at that point, after the security guard started the fight, our client at that time, he threw punches and we couldn't get around that. He actually had kicked him and it looked like he kicked him in the head.
That's not good.
And the prosecutor decided that they weren't going to bring charges against this guy, claiming stand your ground and that it was self-defense.
For the shooter.
Yeah, so we're dealing with the wrongful conduct rule. We had to fight that MSJ in this case. But what was really helpful was none of this happens if the bouncer doesn't instigate the problem. And so anyways, so our guy punches him a couple of times or whatever, but then a friend grabs our guy and pulls him off him. And as he does that, it gives the bouncer time, who pulls out his gun and shoots him basically from where you and I are twice, like right in the chest. And he collapses on the couch and he later dies.
Oh my gosh. That's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, and the family, the West family, very, very tight family. They've made me an honorary West family member. We fought really hard on that case though. And you know, that's one of the rewarding parts of this job is when you do that, when you get justice for a family, and it's actually created a nice friendship, and I keep in touch with them. And but devastated the family because he had a 9-year-old daughter that he left behind, and having to meet with her and get her story to present
all out at the club, just all over trying to leave a club,
all just over the fact of if you're going to start a fight, you don't shoot first and ask questions later.
So what was the key to success in that case?
The key to success in that case was just never letting up. And I sent a lot of demand letters to the defense attorney and their clients just to remind them of how much exposure and liability they were facing.
Because a lot of times these bars don't have enough insurance. And the insurance companies are very difficult to get to do what they need to do.
Yeah, that's right. And but it was just staying on top of them. And then I think what really sort of helped is that we just did an offer of judgment on them. And when we did that, then they said, yeah, we'll pay. Yeah,
almost the entire insurance policy, right?
Well, we made it. So yeah, we went just a hair under because we wanted to incorporate Xavier's birthday into it. So the last digits are 8/2/1994 for his birthday.
Oh, wow. And that was it.
And that was it. 998.
And that was it. So what's the next trial?
So the next trial is another tough case. It's going to be tried down in Tennessee in the federal courthouse. A semi-truck driver who had just been driving in this country for 2 months and got a CDL a month prior.
Where was he from?
He's from Afghanistan.
Was he driving trucks in Afghanistan?
He was not. He was just... He was actually like an engineer in Afghanistan, but there was some issue about getting his license and stuff to be able to practice here. So he just decided to drive trucks as a way to make money while he's here. So he has very little experience even in that sort of what I call a blue collar type job, but he gets gas 30 minutes beforehand, and he says he thinks the gas cap is off. And he thinks that the gas cap being off is there's all this diesel is just shooting out all over the highway, and there's this hazard.
That's ridiculous.
So he pulls off the I-40, pulls off the highway, 75
in the middle of the highway,
right off to the shoulder, 75 mile an hour
in a semi truck.
Knowing they can't.
I hate going past these semis on the side of the road on the highway.
Yeah. He gets back on the highway after he checks it and realizes just the gas cap. Gets back on at 5 miles an hour. Our guy is driving a U-Haul. He rear ends him though. Says that.
But the truck pulls on at a low speed. I mean, that's dangerous, right?
5 miles an hour. Our guy says to the state highway patrol, well, I looked at my GPS to see where I was going, but the GPS where he keeps it is exactly where the state trooper keeps hers. I think that's what they're going to want to try to argue, but you don't pull out into a highway at 5 miles an hour where people are going 75 miles an hour. And, this guy already has a failure to yield. So he obviously has difficulty judging distance and knowing when it's safe to pull out.
A previous failure to yield? He's only been driving trucks for 2 months.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, boy. So this is down in Tennessee, huh?
Motions in limine are going to be important in this case.
Yeah, well, good luck, Michael, and thanks for all your hard work, and keep up the good work.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's been another great episode of Cases Gone Wild. Please, if you or someone you know needs help, don't hesitate to reach out. 833-MARKO-LAW, M-A-R-K-O Law, or go to our website, markolaw.com, markolaw.com. We'll see you in another 2 weeks right here on another episode of Cases Gone Wild.